There is this Latin idea called instaquilnis inventur. And what this means is what you are most trying to find is to be found where you are least trying to look. And this is an ancient idea. And what it speaks of is entering the cave that you are most afraid of. It's entering what seems to be something you're called to do, not just a calling. I don't want to be a bit much cliche, but there are things that we are afraid of doing, productive things, and if we go ahead and do it, we are going to find a lot more about ourselves that we did not know. So the cave that is blocked by fear is inside there. You're going to find a goal that would be able to allow you to elevate yourself past your limitations. And what I'm trying to say, and why am I saying this, is introducing my new endeavor, the participating in our page, my page called Ideation, the Lab for Development. And basically, what this page is inclined to do is to discuss ideas. I'm interested in ideas, and one of my favorite authors, Carl Jung, says ideas have people. People don't have ideas. And what this means, each and every single one of us, our life is an idea. We're living out an idea. And sometimes we might be unconscious of it, sometimes we are conscious of it. So what I'm trying to do is make the fact that we are unconscious about certain ideas to bring that consciousness to light. It's a form of education. And this is the journey that we're going on with Ideation. And we're happy that we will appreciate if you journey with us on that. So we have persons who follow us already, and we would like to develop a better following. The reason why we would like to discuss ideas, there are a negative connotation to ideas. People normally say it's not good to have ideas, it's better to have action. Sometimes your action, you don't know where your action is going, or you do not have a successful procedure for your action, and that's where ideation, action, ideas come into play. An idea is a process between what you know and where you're trying to get. It's the procedure between the known and the unknown, and where you're trying to go. So there are a lot of ideas in our culture right now. We are in the age of information. We are in the digital, the knowledge economy, and we are in the digital economy. So a lot of ideas have been pervading our culture, almost like we are already a global economy in some sense. And the marketplace of ideas is where majority of the action takes place before it grounds itself into policy and it's passed into our legislature in our country. So I think understanding ideas, discussing ideas, and being able to implement ideas is a very good way to develop ourselves individually, our family, our community, our society, and by extension, our culture and our region. So with that, welcome to Ideation, and we're looking to embark on a wonderful journey. Our first topic is, why is it our first, well, we're speaking on ideas, and our first idea we want to really look into is, why is it that the system is losing its boys and men? And the reason why we're going to speak about this firstly is because I teach at an all-boys school. I am part of a organization called Ideas for Boys and Men, and we have looked deep into the issue of male development and what are the problems surrounding that. And I spent some time thinking about it. The process that I am going to take to approach this. I'm going to write about it first, and then I'm going to present my findings via a solo discussion on there. We also are going to have interviews with individuals in the fields to basically understand how the ideas can be practical and pragmatic. So let's journey with us. Thank you. Young men seems to have turned their backs on institutions. When I say institutions, I speak about things like health, religion. And for this particular video, I'm going to speak about more in-depth education. Men are not, men don't seem to want to participate in the development of life anymore. And somebody might say this is a very strong claim. Where is your evidence to prove that? Well, look at the numbers. The numbers says it all. Men have fallen behind in all metric of measurement. Men have, the young boys I teach in an all-boys school. Young boys are behind in reading, and we are going to see the data. I'm going to present that. Young men are behind in writing at schools at all grade levels. Young men are behind in the amount of young men who get certified, whether you're a skilled worker, whether you're academically inclined, they don't get certified. Young men are behind in generally much of everything when you really think about it. That's the evidence that I'm going to present. I'm making some bold claims, but that's the evidence that I'm going to present, the evidence as we move forward. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we have been influenced, whether consciously or unconsciously, to turn our backs on, especially the education system, what it means to be educated, what it means to be educated throughout time. It has lost meaning. We think that education is just having a piece of paper, just to speak locally, local parlance. Being educated is just to attend a school. But we are going to now again investigate, just to touch on it. Education is more than just a certificate and a wall. When you do the etymology of education, it really speaks about the ability to think. I think a Latin word called educor. Educor is to draw out, and the ability to think and the ability to solve problems. If young men have lost the ability to solve problems, the ability to think of practical, meaningful solution that is beneficial to them, that is beneficial to the family, that is beneficial to the community, that is beneficial to society in general, and to the economic development of our country. If they cannot solve problems for the interpersonal life, how would they solve problems in a wider area? Because education itself speaks to the ability to solve problems. That's educor. You can research it at home. You can type into Google the etymology of the etymology of education, or the etymology of educate, and it speaks to the ability to think critically, to think. And thinking is a product, let me say, of problem solving, and we are very low in problem solving. So I've said a lot. I've made a lot of my individual claims. I would like to follow the research and to show what other people are saying on the topic. We know that cross-culturally, and this problem is not just with us in the Caribbean. This problem is cross-culturally. There are places in Japan. There are specific words that are used to describe the failure of men. Chinese, there are words used to describe the failure of men. And also in Europe, there are they call NEET, not in education, not in training, not in what? NEET, not in education, not in employment, and not in training. They actually have the problem is so widespread. It's actually coined. I will not be able to pronounce the Chinese name, but I'm going to put it up on the screen. The Japanese name as well. I'm going to put it up on the screen. So cross-culturally, some ideas have been pervading our culture for a very long time. That is influencing the development of men and boys, and this is something that we are investigating. Like I said, our organization, Ideas for Men and Boys, we have been thinking about this for a very long time. We have read the data, we have read the books, and we are going to present, I'm going to present on some of the findings. So what I'm really looking at is, why are men and boys less interested in participating in institutions like education? And does that increase the social ills which surround the males and surround the social ills? Or if you look at the past 4 years, not the past 4 years, I think from 2017 up to 2017, 18, 19, 2021, if you add up the amount of young men that have died and young men that have lost their life to crime and violence, it's almost like 291 in some sense. And the primary school that I teach in, we have an average of 250 young men. That shows that within 4 years we can lose a primary school of young men on the island. Every study, every statistic tells the same story. Our boys and men are falling behind in education, in health, in physical well being, in economic stability. At Ideas for Boys and Men, we've made it our mission to dig deeper, to understand the real root causes, and to deliver practical, powerful solutions that restore hope and direction. Whether you're a young man searching for purpose or someone who cares deeply about the next generation, you don't have to figure it out alone. Visit ideasslu.org. Explore our services, join the movement, and discover how you can find purpose and meaning and direction in your life. Ideas for Boys and Men, because your future matters. And we know we've been hearing the cry to stop the violence. We've been hearing the cry to young people do better. But if we look closely at the demographic of the persons that are losing their lives and committing the crime, we are going to see 98% of them are young men that are losing their lives, young men that are in the prisons, young men that are all, like I said, on every metric of measurement. The young men are falling through the cracks. And what are we genuinely looking at this? Are we genuinely thinking about this? Are we genuinely reading about this? Are we trying to find are we trying to really, again, goes back to critical thinking? Are we thinking critically about what the problem is? Or are we just ignoring it and making some bold, wide statements that young people should stop this and young people should stop that? I think we should zone in directly on the problem, and that's what I'm doing right here. So the past 60 years, we have seen an increase in the development of women, and this is no way to compare for competitive aspects. I think if you have a country, if you have a household, if you have a community, and you are sensible in your thinking, you would like to know that both sexes that is in your organization, both sexes that's in the family, both sexes that's in the country, both of them are doing well. Because when, like the Boy Crisis said, Dr. Farrell from the Boys Crisis, when one gender suffers, when one gender is lacking, both gender suffers. And that's a very good claim. So it's not to say that it's a competition, it's not to speak down on the development of women. And women have been, the past 60 years, we have allocated and invested a lot of resources in the development of young women to bring them on the idea of equality, because back then, we could be fair, majority of the things that we're having back then, they needed to be included to be more productive. But my claim is that we cannot focus so heavily on one development. I think that happened, that we focus so deeply on the development of women and girls that we have neglected the development of boys and men. We have passed on so many policies that are catering to the temperament of the one gender, that the other gender feel like no one cares. And because we need to have a real reason why this is happening, why we need to, sometimes you have to make a strong claim and investigate your claim to see what others have said about it, to see how you can implement productive solutions that's grounded in reality and not just ideas that is floating in your head. And I think that's where ideas have a bad connotation, where persons do not leave their feet on the ground when they ideate. They ideate only in their heads. But we're trying to speak through, we're trying to understand it deeply, and we're trying to provide a very good analysis of the problem, so that when we approach or we implement some strategies, we can get results without creating more problems than we're trying to solve. I think with the accommodation of women and the idea, and again, an idea of equality and equity, there there has been a great cultural shift. What we held before as culturally relevant, it needed to be done away with so that the idea of inclusion could have been more practical. And to be fair, there is nothing wrong with that from my point of view, but there are certain things we did not take into consideration when we were making that cultural shift. Shifting the cultures, changing certain policies, and letting go of certain things. I believe certain things had to let go of, but we did not appreciate the best of our inheritance and the culture around our individuals, around our people. It has shifted so much towards the left side of the spectrum that persons fell into what you call nihilism and meaninglessness. And this cultural shift was created to accommodate the inclusion, to accommodate the equality, to accommodate the equity of women into the system. But my thing was that it wasn't done in a more sensitive way to look at what's true, maintain what's true, and let go of what's man-made. So, with that said, let's look at the a paper written, uh, to be fair enough, a paper written in Beijing, China, and Mao Zi. The title was "The Struggle for Women's Rights: History, Present, and Future." It says this paper delves into the multifaceted journey of feminism, tracing its historical evolution and and exploring exploring its contemporary developments. The overreaching goal of feminism has been to challenge and dismantle the traditional gender roles, advocating for equal rights between men and women. The feminism movement has evolved through four distinct waves, each addressing specific facets of gender inequality. The first wave focused on securing legal rights, while the second wave expanded its scope to include education, workplace equality, and reproductive rights. The third wave introduced the concept of intersectionality and the need to consider the experiences of women from diverse backgrounds. The fourth wave leverages technology and social media, aiming to address issues such as online harassment, body positivity, and consent. Contemporary feminism also faces challenges, including online debates between men and women, often rooted in misunderstanding of feminist goals. Despite these hurdles, the future of feminism remains bright. It encompasses key areas: achieving equal treatment of women in the workplace, safeguarding reproductive rights, improving education for women, and fostering global solidarity to combat gender inequality worldwide. That's that's a paper from China, from a thinker in China, Beijing, China. So China is very, like I said, it's a global movement. Right now, we are because of the digital economy, because of the knowledge economy, because of what you call the fourth industrial revolution. We are living in a global space. So we see a lot of podcasts, we see a lot of people giving up the culture, people thinking about ideas and implementing ideas, and they are interested in reasoning on topics like that. And one of the important points for China, communist China, to be fair, very interesting. We need to go deeper into that. But for the purpose of this video, we're not going to go into that. They're advocating that this is something that's important too, and I'm not disagreeing at all. So, not disagreeing on all points. There are certain points that needs to be investigated and reason through and be practical and honest with it. But let's just continue. In that research, they actually said that women, as integral members of society, should inherently possess equal rights and opportunities on par with men. Nevertheless, throughout history, women have consistently occupied a subordinate position, frequently marginalized in politics, economics, and social spheres. This disparity echoes back to the ancient Greek era, demonstrating the prolonged existence of gender-based politics inequality. In the confines of the patriarchal society, issues affecting women, including sexual violence and wage disparities, have often been dismissed or ignored. However, as the modern era dawned, the awakening of women consciousness led to a growing realization that these issues need to be confronted. Women across the world embarked on tireless journeys advocating for their rights, giving birth to the feminist movement. The feminist movement has achieved a remarkable strides in elevating women's rights and status, sparking increased recognition of issues disproportionately affecting women. With the movement's influence expanding, more women have been drawn into its fold, enlarging its sphere. So basically, in some in some point, to some degree, certain things that was said there, we cannot disagree with. We cannot disagree with certain things that was expressed in the paper, because there's this idea that working towards a valuable aim in life, one that benefits you, your family, your community, and your society, has been proven to give men a deeper sense of purpose and meaning. It transforms idle, destructive aggression into focused, ambitious action. One book that captures this truth is Purpose Driven. The meaning of life is found in the purpose to live. If you are a young boy or man searching for direction, this is one of the books you should investigate, because discovering your purpose is the first step towards changing your life. Get your copy on Amazon or call 725-8562. Persons tend to be very emotional and irrational when it comes to thinking critically about something, because sometimes there are 9 things that out of 10 is correct, and somebody who has the proclivity to just think or just throw the baby outside with the bathwater when thinking about something critically, they might throw the 9 out of 10 out because they disagree with one aspect. There are things here that was very well laid out. I totally agree with. So back then, the negative end of the patriarchy, and how persons use it for their own power, and persons use it as persons use it as a power dominating the society. Removing that aspect of the patriarchal order does not speak to the fact that you have to throw out the entire system altogether, because there are positive things from it. There are positive things from it, and majority of the positive things from the patriarchal society or system or order, it benefits men. So if you want to dismantle the patriarchal order and throw it out altogether and not take the best of the inheritance from it, you are actually throwing out what makes a man a man. Let's continue. So that's why I'm going to say what started with good intentions was possessed by what exactly it set out to fight. What started with good intentions, it's like discipline. It's like disciplining a child in some sense. It's like disciplining a child. You want to discipline a child for a specific reason, but in disciplining the child, you are committing more. You are actually destroying that child based on how you are disciplining that child. Because sometimes we think disciplining a child have to be because this, and when you're disciplining a child, and that I think that goes in for law as well, you must be able to apply the necessary force for the infringement that was done. You cannot apply 10 or 100% of force for an infringement that can be estimated at a 10% level. So what I'm trying to say is that when we look at the ideas that came out of feminism and the objective to dismantle and destroy the patriarchy, it looks like it is an irrational thought process to get rid of what's naturally inclined in both masculine and feminine to continue society moving forward. We will over emotionalize the problem. And right now we are experiencing the over emotionalized aspect of the problem, with our young men dying on the wayside, because we have built a society which they don't feel included into. They don't feel, it does not feel that it cares about them, and they are lashing out at the institutions. They are lashing out at society because they feel deep down within that something is missing. It shouldn't be that way. But that doesn't mean the corrective steps that was taken to include women was wrong. It means that it was over emotionalized, and we didn't think about the other gender, because what exactly we were trying to fight, we became the exact thing that we were trying to fight. The oppressed becomes the oppressor. And this is what we're seeing on an ideological level. This is what we're seeing on a philosophical level when you investigate the institutions, when you investigate why young men do not feel included. Because we talk about inclusion, inclusion has been pushed for a very long time for only the including of women and all other things that are not naturally inclined. But where, against who? Against what? Against men. The fight is against men. The fight is against masculine tendencies. It's not included. Just look, the education system, and I'm an educator at an all-boys school. I can tell you, the masculine tendencies, the masculine imperative, it's not included. That's why the men are turning their backs on society. If that's not the reason, if you can come up with a better reason, then that would be great. Let's carry on. So, we will speak about equality. That's another idea we are going to discuss, and we might have some other person on the show, on our podcast, to discuss the ideas of equality. But I don't think people are equal as human beings. I'm just going to touch on that. But there are fundamental distinctions grounded in principles between men and women. You cannot tell me people are equal to the fact that a man can see himself as a woman and a woman can see herself as a man. And there is no biological distinction between the two. There is a biological distinction between the two. And the biological distinction between the two, we can start with one: hormones, testosterone, estrogen. They select for two different things. That I'm going to stop on that point, but we're going to go. So when we talk about equality, what is it that we're equating for? What is it that we're equalizing for? And that's a very good point, because if you want to uplift one side of the spectrum, which is the feminine temperament, you have to decrease the other side of the spectrum, which is the masculine imperative. What do you leave for the men that are more masculine in the temperament, that are more aggressive? What do you leave for them? You are excluding all of them altogether. You say the society is not for you. You are too aggressive. You are too productive. You are too driven. You are not soft. You are not overly compassionate. So you need to be out of the society. So what do you think they're going to do? Just go out of the society and do nothing? There's this author that really agreed with the point that I was making. She's the author and university professor and scholar at the American Enterprise Institute, Christina Hoff Sommers. She published the book titled The War Against Boys: How Misguided Policies Are Harming Our Young Men. In this book, she stated that girls and women were once second-class citizens in the nation's schools. Americans responded with concerted effort to give girls and women the attention and assistance that was long overdue. Now, after two major waves of feminism and a decade of policy reform, women have made massive strides in education. Today, they outperform men in nearly every measure of social, academic, and vocational well-being. Goes back to the other point that the paper from China made. This was the exact aim. This was the exact aim. So, in my view, and based on what I read, there is a deliberate ideological thrust to erase the fundamental difference between male and female. That's the only way the idea of total inequality can survive. not having any clear distinction between what a woman. And we see it through the society, we see it through, and again, we're living in a knowledge space. We're living in a knowledge space, we're living in the fourth industrial revolution, we're living in the right now knowledge, the knowledge economy is a real thing. So you see a lot of persons on social media and podcasts and women saying, I don't need a man. I'm the same thing as a man. There's no difference between me and a man. Everything a man can do, I can do. Even Justice Ketanji Jackson, she couldn't even. She's one of the justices in the American politics, and she couldn't even have a clear distinction between what a man and a woman is. She said she's not a biologist. She doesn't know the distinction between that, because all of that is grounded in an ideological push with a specific reason to destroy the patriarchal order. But the patriarchal order has a very long history, not because it fell to the negative power hungry aspects. That means everything with the patriarchal order was bad. And that's what we need to understand. But the over emotional response to the corrective measures of the patriarchal order created that extra push towards destroying even the spirit that pervades the patriarchal order. And that's something you need to understand. So let's listen to what she has to say.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No,
Yeah,
I can't.
you can't?
Not in
Okay.
this context.
So you
I'm not a
believe the meaning
biologist.
of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments, and I look at the
All right.
law and I decide. So I'm not.
The fact that you can't give me a straight answer about something as fundamental as what a woman is underscores the dangers of the kind of progressive education that we are hearing about.
So, with the global push for a problem that was real, not imagined, not a phantom, a problem that we all try to solve as humanity, which I agree with, the something gripped us in that space, in that time to solve the problem. And we have pushed concepts, we have pushed the concept of equality. We policymakers have neglected, with that push, we have policymakers neglecting the development of boys and men. But there is a recourse, and I really appreciate the recourse. There is a recourse, but we do not want the recourse to create more problems, because one of two paths of the recourse, two paths of solving that. You come up with a created idea of what a man is, which is that's what they're doing now: transgender, LGBT, FHG, HIJK, all of that. You redefine masculinity based on what you want it to be, or you go based on the masculinity that was provided, the masculinity that is built in reality, the masculinity that we know to be true, that good shepherd, the man that can take care of the innocent and the young, and the man that can keep the monsters outside of the society, the strong man who can provide, the strong man who can also provide and protect, and also the caring man that can take care of the vulnerable, the young, and the weak. But one of the paths that I'm saying is that we want to take away the aggression instead of directing the aggression towards construction, the constructive ideas. We want to take away the aggression altogether and create an effeminate, feminine man, and say that's the new model of masculinity. We have to be careful with that. We have to be very careful with that. So the Center for Social Justice report in the UK Times, a young woman as well, she also spoke against that. In this paper, The Lost Boys, How a Generation of Young Men Fell Behind Women Pay. And she said, And it said, the former Conservative MP Miriam Kate, a senior fellow at the CSJ, said, for too long, politicians and policymakers, the media, and the arts have turned a blind eye to the needs of boys in the name of equality. We are now reaping the whirlwind. Far from creating equality, we have penalized young men for the crime of being male, labeling them toxic and problematic, and raising and failing to provide a positive vision of masculinity. Things need to change, and fast. So, my thing is that pulling up women is not a problem. Successful women is not a problem. Ignoring and neglecting the masculine imperative is the problem. To equalize something that is not a social construct, we must aim to destroy the natural proclivity of men to make them the same as women. So we have to be careful with the whole idea of equality. We have to be careful with the whole idea of equality. So if we're trying to turn a monkey into a fish, which is impossible, one of those things are going to die. We are going to take the fish out of the water and put it in a tree to swing as the monkey. That's impossible. The fish is going to die. That's why so many of our young men are dying. We're trying to equip them. We're trying to take them out of the element, take them out of the presence of God, and trying to make them into becoming women. So they're falling along the wayside. They're dying by great numbers every year. That's an ideological problem. That is a philosophical problem. That is a spiritual problem that we are facing. We can have a difference in opinion based on my claims and based on the claims of the persons that I've referenced, based on the different points that I've made, but we cannot turn our back on the facts. There are numbers, there are facts, there are persons who research that. And they have seen, like I said, on every metric of measurement, our society has been constructed to include women because they were excluded before. And because of that, the statistics prove clearly that our boys are being attacked greater than they can even understand. For example, look at the data on that. Look at the data from the Nation Report Cards the Nation Report Card writing 2007 shows that look at the data here. Between 1999 to 2007, boys have stayed behind in writing for about 20 points. 20 points, the female and male gap score in writing. In writing. And it's the same thing for reading, because writing comes from reading. If you can read, when you are reading, you are able to read, and I experience that as well. We have a lot of young boys from the school that I teach and from other schools who cannot read. You cannot comprehend, you cannot abstract, you cannot think, you cannot solve problems, you cannot articulate yourself. And they're asking him to articulate himself and express his emotions. How can he express his emotions if he is unable to find the necessary words to say how he feels? So you see the frustration, you see where the aggression is directed to destruction. So looking at the scorecard again, from 1998 to 2002 to 2007, the writing gap, the female writing gap from 8th grade, the averages, the scores, men have remained, young boys who average from 140, 143, and 146. That's a great gap. If you understand that, from 160 to 164 to 166, we have stayed 20 points behind women in terms of writing in 8th grade. What does that tell you? What does that say? What is that? And one might say that that's not important because we have muscle power and we don't need to read, we don't need to write, and that doesn't say anything. And that's where the idea of falling behind in education comes into play. So there's this article again, the National Center for Education Statistics published an article titled "Trends in Educational Equity." They express, hear what they express. They express reading and writing are basic skills required for most jobs requirements and for functioning in contemporary society. In contemporary society, they said those jobs are required for operating in contemporary society. the society that we are now, what we are in now, the fourth industrial revolution. We are moving from the third industrial revolution. We move from muscle power to computing power, right? So right now in the third industrial revolution, moving from the third industrial revolution to the fourth industrial revolution, we are moving by computing power into more deeper technologies like computer chips and different things like that. We're moving deeper into a more not academic driven but more creative thinking kind of because I read this article from World Health Organization, the Jobs Report 2025, and the top skills that are required to be successful in our contemporary society, like they mentioned, is a lot of the first three have to do with critical thinking, systems thinking, um, 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 creative thinking, and that's why we're teaching that in our that's why our new educational model, our OCHP, the OECS model, the new curriculum that they're implementing, that's the four C's. They're teaching that right now, but again, the young men are staying behind. The young men are staying behind. The critical thinking. They tell you in this paper, beginning in 1971 and continuing through every year of assessment, female ages 9, 13, and 17 has tested higher than the male peers in reading assessment administered as part of the National Assessment of Education Progress. And here is the data point. Again, females in grade 4, 8, and 11 have outperformed the male peers in writing as well since 1988. Difference in male and female writing achievement have been relatively large, with male 11th graders scoring at about the same level as male 8th graders. And we have also seen this trend in the Caribbean. You're saying, okay, you're reading things that are Americanized. This is not in the Caribbean. We're doing better in the Caribbean. It's the same thing in the Caribbean. The World Bank says that boys in the Caribbean are suffering educational setbacks in what has been termed a reverse gender gap. And this is posing challenges to the regional socio-economic landscape. In Jamaica, for example, fewer boys and men attend upper secondary school and tertiary education. And this is affecting the male population and the rural and socio-economic disadvantaged populations more than others. The World Bank's updated gender strategy aims to address these challenges by engaging boys and men in gender-specific issues. The strategy also reaffirms the World Bank's commitment to equality and inclusion. That's why I believe there is a direct correlation between lack of education in boys and men with the increase in social ills like crime, violence, and the increase of male imprisonment. We have created a pathway as a society from the home to the class, into the streets, into the prisons, and under the ground for our young men. The pathway may capture 65% of our young men if nothing is done. So I'm going to answer the question, was Nelson Mandela incorrect when he said education is the most powerful weapon which can be used to change the world? Was John Washington Carver's thinking when he said education is the key wrong? The education that will change the world and the education that is the key is not the education we are promoting today. This is why the young men are disinterested. Like Einstein so richly said, education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. That's our biggest problem. Our males are not taught to think. They are taught to feel, act on emotion, act on impulse. They are taught to be women and not men. Again, the etymology of educate. To bring up, to train, from Latin to educare, bring up, rear, which is, look going down here, yep. To bring out, to lead forth. The meaning provides schooling. Educate, to bring out, to bring forth, to think, to bring out ideas, to act on your ideas, to use your mind, to be rational. To be educated is not to be emotional, to act on impulse. It's to be able to put impulse under subjection and to think of pathways of growth, to think of solutions to problems, the betterment of yourself, the betterment of your country, the betterment of your society. It's not having a degree hung over your head. That's not what it is. It's not having a piece of paper. It's being a good human being. It's being able to not be impulsive, not try to kill somebody because they step on your shoe, not sitting on by the wayside, not finding things to do and blaming the government. Is willfully participating in life, creating solutions, making things better for society. That's what it means to be educated, not a piece of paper with your name on it that says degree or master's or that. No, that shows, that helps. It's a system that helps you to learn how to think in a specific way, in a specific domain. It's good. I'm not saying it's bad. But the true definition of education is not captured only in just a piece of paper. It's your ability to use your mind. It's ability to use the gift of abstraction and to make it serve something higher with a greater purpose. And as ideas for boys and men, I think we are journeying on a difficult path with our mandate of developing, reducing male lack of education. We want to increase male literacy. And I think we have spent enough. We have some ideas in stock. We have our website. You can join us our website if you want to join. Our website will be in the link provided. Like I said, this is went out into the unknown. This is something I pray that I continue to do. I can strengthen it moving forward. But this is my first one, and I pray that I continue to try to bring off ideas, to speak about ideas for development, and I strengthen my craft with as time progresses. I would be able to make it a little more iterate more. That's what they call iteration, the ability to start something, jump into something, and progress forward meaningfully, and progress forward, take everybody with you to a better way of seeing things and applying what you know. So thank you very much for listening. I know it was a bit. I thank you for listening. Let's continue the journey from strength to strength.